Miss Sally Struthers.
Hello, Mr. Gunn.
Nobody was prepared for this. Not the media, not Hollywood, not even the people who thought they knew this story inside and out. When the news first broke, everyone expected the same old routine, a carefully polished statement, a few safe words about grief, privacy, and respect, the kind of response Hollywood has perfected over decades. But that's not what happened. What happened instead was raw, unfiltered, and deeply unsettling. Because when Sally Struthers finally spoke, she didn't read from a script. She didn't hide behind publicists or legal language. She spoke from a place of pain that had clearly been buried for far too long. And in doing so, she cracked open a story far darker than anyone imagined. Sally wasn't just a former co-star. She wasn't just Gloria to his meathead on All in the Family. She was family, a bond forged under a studio lights, laughter, and years of shared history, a bond that survived fame, success, and the slow passing of time. So when Sally broke her silence, it wasn't for attention. It wasn't for headlines. It was because, in her own words, she couldn't carry the truth alone anymore. What she revealed instantly changed everything we thought we knew about Rob's final months. This wasn't just a tragic loss. This wasn't just another sad Hollywood farewell. According to Sally, this was the end result of something far more disturbing, something that had been happening quietly, behind locked doors, inside one of Brentwood's most guarded homes. Her voice shook as she spoke, not only with grief, but with anger, a kind of anger no one had ever seen from her before. She admitted she had stayed silent for years to protect Rob's name, to protect his legacy, to protect the family. But now, she said, the truth about his son could no longer be hidden. Then came the line that sent chills through everyone watching. We all saw the bruises on his soul, she said, but we were too afraid to ask about the bruises on his arms. That single sentence changed the entire narrative, because suddenly this wasn't about rumors. It wasn't about speculation. It was about fear. Sally spoke about a lunch they shared just 3 weeks before everything ended. The last time she ever saw him alive, she didn't describe the confident, outspoken filmmaker the world adored. She described a man who looked smaller, fragile, like something inside him was slowly being drained away. She said he kept checking his phone every few minutes, flinching every time it buzzed, as if he was bracing himself for something he couldn't escape. And when she finally asked if everything was okay, he looked her straight in the eyes and said something she would never forget. "I don't know how to stop him, Sal. I love him, but I'm terrified of him." At the time, she didn't fully understand what he meant, but soon she would. And when she did, it shattered her forever. At first, Sally didn't grasp the weight of what Rob had just confessed. I'm terrified of him? In Hollywood, fear often comes wrapped in professional chaos, a producer dispute, a political enemy, a legal battle behind the scenes. That's what Sally assumed it was. She tried to reassure him, tried to change the subject, tried to pull him back into laughter, into memories, into the comfort of the past. But Rob never relaxed. His eyes kept drifting back to his phone. His shoulders stayed tense, and there was a quiet urgency in his voice that refused to fade. 3 weeks later, the call came. Rob and Michelle were gone. In that moment, the words from that lunch hit Sally like a physical blow. The realization crashed over her all at once. Rob hadn't been talking about Hollywood. He hadn't been talking about work. He had been talking about his own son. The guilt was immediate and crushing. She replayed that lunch over and over in her mind. Every pause, every glance, every unspoken plea she hadn't recognized at the time, and then the story took a turn no one saw coming. Because suddenly another name began quietly surfacing behind the scenes. Tom Cruise. At first, it sounded absurd, like one of those wild internet connections people love to exaggerate. But the deeper you look, the more it starts to make sense. Tom Cruise and Rob Reiner weren't casual acquaintances. A few good men had bound them together in a way few films ever do. They stayed close, they trusted each other. And if there's one thing people consistently say about Tom Cruise, it's this. He notices everything. Sources close to the situation say Tom had been concerned for months, concerned in a way that went far beyond friendly curiosity. According to multiple insiders, he saw things others ignored or chose not to say. Back in November, Tom reportedly showed up at the Reiner home under the pretense of discussing a new project. That was the official story. What really happened that day was something far darker. He didn't confront Rob, he confronted Nick. What he walked into, insiders say, was chaos. Nick was yelling, demanding money, demanding access to a trust fund that had been locked due to ongoing substance issues. Michelle was trying to calm him down, trying to de-escalate, trying to survive another outburst. And then Tom did something no one expected. He stepped between Nick and his mother. People who later spoke with Tom say the moment never left him. He described the look in Nick's eyes as empty, cold, dangerous, not confusion, not distress, intent. Afterward, Tom allegedly pulled Rob aside and delivered a warning that still echoes now. "You are not safe in this house," he told him. "You need to get him out, or you need to get out." Think about that for a moment. A man who has seen everything Hollywood can throw at you. A man surrounded by security, power, and influence. And he was shaken enough to say that. But Rob did what so many loving parents do. He defended his child. "He's sick," Rob reportedly said. "We can't abandon him. He just needs one more chance." A father's hope, clinging to the belief that love would eventually win. Sally would later confirm that this pattern defined Rob's final years. Forgiveness, patience, endless second chances, and tragically, it was that very kindness that may have sealed his fate. Sally Struthers didn't just speak about Rob with sadness. She spoke with guilt. A heavy, lingering guilt that sounded like it had been eating at her for a long time. Because after that November warning from Tom Cruise, Rob didn't become safer. He became quieter. He started pulling away from everyone who loved him. Sally said Rob began canceling dinners, skipping calls, ignoring messages, drifting away from the old all-in-the-family circle like a man slowly disappearing in plain sight. They even tried to set up a reunion dinner not long ago. Something small, something warm, a chance to reconnect. Rob turned it down, and Sally admitted something that felt chilling in hindsight. She said her gut told her something was wrong. So about a week ago, she did something she never thought she'd have to do. She drove by his house, not to snoop, not for gossip, just to check that he was still okay. But what she saw made her blood run cold. Every blind was shut tight. In the middle of the day, the property didn't look like a home anymore. It looked like a bunker, a place built to keep the world out and something else in. She texted him, "I'm outside." Hours passed, nothing. Then finally Rob replied with just a few words. "Not a good time, he's home." 2 words that carried a chill far heavier than they should have. He's home. Not Nick is home. Not my son is here. Just, he's home. Like saying the name out loud was too dangerous. Like even writing it down might trigger something. And then Sally dropped the part of the story that shocked people the most. It wasn't only emotional, it was financial, because people assume Hollywood families never run out of money. That fame means endless protection. But Sally revealed Rob wasn't just emotionally trapped, he was financially drowning. She said Rob had been quietly selling off assets, not for new projects, not to maintain a lifestyle, but to cover massive debts Nick had piled up. Gambling debts, money owed to dealers, the kind of people you don't want anywhere near your gate in Brentwood. Rob was paying to keep trouble away, trying to protect his son the only way he knew how, but what he didn't realize was that the danger wasn't outside the gates anymore. The real threat was already living under his roof. Then Sally shared a moment investigators are now treating as a major clue, a moment that, at the time, everyone brushed off, but now looks completely different. She said about 6 months ago during a small family gathering, Rob supposedly fell down the stairs. That was the official story, a simple accident. They said he slipped, broke his wrist, had bruises on his face. But when Sally visited him in the hospital, she noticed something that didn't sit right. She stared at his face, and the bruising didn't look like a fall. It looked like a hand. Sally asked him directly, "Did Nick do this?" And Rob didn't answer. He just looked away and started to cry. That silence said everything, because how do you admit something like that? How do you tell the world the child you raised, the child you would die for, has become your abuser? Sally said they never spoke about it again. But that moment haunted her. And now, with everything that happened afterward, it no longer feels like an accident. It feels like a warning, one everyone saw and no one wanted to name. After Sally revealed the bruises, the fear, and the quiet financial collapse, the story should have ended there. But then Tom Cruise's side of it surfaced, and somehow it made everything even more heartbreaking. Because according to sources close to him, Tom wasn't just worried, he was devastated. And at some point, he reportedly tried to do what most people only talk about doing. He offered help in the most extreme, serious way possible. Not a gentle suggestion, not a casual, maybe he should get treatment, a real plan, a full intervention. Insiders say Tom had even offered to pay for Nick's treatment himself, and not just any facility, one of those high-security rehab centers in Switzerland, the kind built for the toughest cases, the kind where you can't simply walk out when you feel like it. Tom allegedly told Rob something like, "I'll handle it. Let me take the burden off you." Imagine hearing that from someone like Tom Cruise, a man with power, access, influence, someone who could move mountains if he wanted. And for a moment, it sounded like the nightmare might finally have an exit. But here's the twist that turned hope into tragedy. Nick refused to go, and Rob refused to force him. That's the part that hits the hardest, because it shows what Sally was trying to tell everyone all along. Rob wasn't blind, he wasn't weak, he was trapped inside a father's love, a love so deep it can override logic, a love so fierce it can convince you that one more chance will fix everything, even when danger is standing right in front of you. And when Tom realized Rob still wouldn't take the final step, the guilt followed him too. Sources say Tom later told people close to him, "I watched a slow-motion car crash for 2 years, and couldn't stop it. That kind of guilt doesn't fade. It just settles into you. And now, with Nick arrested and the legal storm forming, that guilt is about to collide with something even uglier because Nick's defense team, according to whispers, is already preparing their narrative. They want to frame everything around mental health, a sudden break from reality, a tragic episode, but Sally Struthers isn't buying it, and she made that painfully clear. She said this wasn't some spontaneous moment of madness. She believed it was calculated. She described Nick as someone who knew exactly how to manipulate the people around him, how to switch between sweetness and cruelty like it was a skill. According to Sally, he could turn on the charm whenever he needed something. A check signed, a door unlocked, a chance restored. He'd become apologetic, warm, almost like the loving son Rob kept praying he'd return to. And then, the moment he got what he wanted, the mask would drop. What followed, Sally said, wasn't just conflict, it was psychological torture. Rob and Michelle, she claimed, were living inside what she called a domestic war zone. And that leads to the question that makes people uncomfortable. Where was everyone else? Where were the friends? Why is it only now that Sally is speaking? And leaks from Tom's circle are surfacing. Sally answered it with one brutal sentence, because Hollywood protects its own. It protects reputations, it protects legacies, it protects the illusion. And nobody wanted to face the truth that a beloved, wholesome Hollywood figure could be living in fear inside his own home. But Sally, she said, she was done with the hush culture. She didn't care about careers anymore. She didn't care about reputations. She wanted justice. And she wasn't finished talking. As Sally kept speaking, the focus slowly shifted. It wasn't just about Rob anymore. It was about Michelle, the woman who, according to Sally, spent years trying to keep peace inside a home that was slowly turning hostile. Sally revealed something that stopped people cold. Michelle had started locking her bedroom door at night. Let that sink in. A mother sleeping in her own house, afraid of her own child on the other side of the door. Michelle once confessed something to Sally that never left her mind. I wake up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway, she said, and my heart stops. That a single line said everything. This wasn't a Hollywood mansion filled with laughter and comfort. It was a house ruled by tension, by waiting, by fear. Rob and Michelle weren't living a celebrity life. They were prisoners in their own home, and the cruelest part of it all, the person holding them hostage was their own son. As detectives began piecing together the timeline, Sally shared details that made the final night even more disturbing. This wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow siege. According to neighbors, Nick had been unraveling for days, shouting, doors slamming, objects breaking. The noise came and went for nearly 48 hours. So why didn't anyone call the police? Because this was Brentwood, the land of silent gates and polite distance. You don't call the cops on your famous neighbors. You turn up the music. You mind your business. And that silence gave Nick exactly what he needed: time. Then came another detail that made the story even harder to hear. According to leaked information from Tom Cruise's circle, Rob did reach out for help that night, but not to 911. He called a private security firm. The call was logged at 9:15 p.m. The guard didn't arrive until 9:45, 30 minutes, just half an hour. And that window was when everything ended. Sources say Tom is furious about the response time, because when a man calls for help with fear in his voice, 30 minutes can mean life or death. But once again, Rob was still trying to protect his son. He likely didn't say, "He's going to kill us." He probably said something softer. "My son is having an episode. Can you send someone?" Even in his final moments, Rob couldn't bring himself to name the danger for what it was. He still saw Nick as his boy, and that hesitation cost them everything. Sally said it best. Rob died trying to be a father. Those words hit like a punch to the chest, because according to the coroner's report, Michelle had defensive wounds. She fought back. But Rob? Almost none. He didn't resist. He just took it. The image of a man who spent his life fighting for justice, standing there, refusing to harm his own child. It's haunting beyond words. And now, as the legal storm gathers, the story is about to enter its most dangerous chapter yet. After the tragedy, the spotlight didn't fade. It intensified. Because now, this isn't only about what happened that night. It's about what happens next. The legal storm around Nick's arrest is building fast, and according to Sally, the battle won't just be fought in court. It will be fought in public, over the story, over the legacy, over who gets to shape how Rob and Michelle are remembered. Sally made a desperate plea, and it sounded like someone trying to stop a lie before it takes root. "Don't let them twist it," she warned, because she believes Nick's defense team is already preparing to turn the narrative upside down, to paint Rob and Michelle as controlling, abusive, responsible for what happened. And Sally knows how this works. In high-profile cases, the spin begins early. Victim blaming always creeps in, and once the public start questioning the victims, the truth gets buried under noise. So Sally spoke now before the machine could take over. She said Rob's only crime was being too soft, loving too much, forgiving too easily, believing there was always one more chance left. And then came another revelation that made people sit up straight. Reports say Tom Cruise is ready to testify if it comes to that. Think about what that means. Tom Cruise taking the stand, his voice cracking, facing the son of his close friend in a courtroom, not for attention, not for headlines, but to make sure Nick never walks free. Insiders say Tom wants the full timeline laid out in front of a jury. The intervention, the warnings, the fear, the signs everyone ignored. He wants the court to understand one thing clearly. Nick wasn't lost in confusion. He made choices, clear, cold, and deliberate. And then, just when the story already felt unbearable, Sally dragged the past into it. Because she said the warning signs didn't begin recently. They were there years ago, even when Nick was a teenager. She shared a memory that hit like a good punch. At a rap party long ago, a young Nick was found alone in a back room, not crying, not panicking, destroying property calmly, methodically, breaking things one by one as if it gave him peace. Then Rob walked in, and Nick didn't look ashamed. He didn't look scared. According to Sally, he smiled. That moment stayed with her for decades. She said she told Rob right then, get him help. And they did. They found the best doctors money could buy, the best resources, the best experts, the best treatment money can reach. But Sally said something next that landed like thunder. You can't buy empathy, she said. You can't fix a heart with a checkbook. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all, because it means the Reiners didn't ignore the problem. They fought it. They poured everything into trying to save him. But if someone doesn't want to be saved, love becomes a trap. And now, after Sally's interview, Hollywood's reaction has been explosive. People are erasing old photos, cutting ties, pretending they barely knew Nick. The distancing has officially begun, but not Sally. She's standing firm, pointing straight at what she believes is the truth. She said, Rob Reiner's death shouldn't just be treated like another celebrity tragedy. She called it what she believes it really was, domestic violence. And she said, it's time the world stops whispering about it and starts naming it. Sally's words didn't just expose one family's tragedy. They cracked open something Hollywood hates more than anything, a broken illusion, because people kept asking the same question again and again. But he was Rob Reiner. Why didn't he just kick Nick out? Why didn't he hire bodyguards? Why didn't he call the police? Sally's answer wasn't simple, but it was brutally human, because love can paralyze you. It clouds logic. It blurs danger. It traps you inside hope. Rob wasn't weak, she insisted. He was a father who couldn't stop loving his son, even when that love was destroying him. And that's the part that makes this story so hard to face. In the real world, love doesn't always rescue people. Sometimes it becomes the chain that keeps you locked in place. Sally said, within all this grief, there was a lesson almost impossible to accept. We grow up believing the stories Rob helped put into the world, that love conquers everything, that patience fixes broken hearts, that if you keep believing, there's always a happy ending waiting. But life isn't a movie, and Sally made it painfully clear. Sometimes love can't save someone who is determined to drown, and worse, sometimes they drag you under with them. Then she revealed what's coming next. The funeral, according to close insiders, is expected to be extremely private, tightly controlled, quiet, every detail handled with care, and Tom Cruise, according to reports, is making sure security is airtight. No loose ends, no unwanted faces, no people from Nick's circle anywhere near this service. It won't be a Hollywood spectacle. It will be guarded, personal, heartbreakingly small for someone whose life was so public. Sally also said she will be speaking, but not just with a standard tribute. She said she has one last letter, a letter she plans to read to Rob, and she claimed it contains the conversation they never finished at that lunch 3 weeks before everything ended. She wouldn't reveal what's inside, but the way she said it left a chill, because it didn't sound like a goodbye. It sounded like closure. She never got to give while he was alive, and while the public mourns, detectives are still combing through what some are already calling a house of horrors in Brentwood. Sally said one thing keeps echoing through all of this. The warning signs were there, people just didn't want to see them. Tom Cruise saw them. Sally felt them. Rob and Michelle lived them every day, trapped in a nightmare no one wanted to acknowledge. It's the tragedy of missed off-ramps, or those moments where one call, one changed luck, one hard decision could have rewritten the ending, but those chances slipped away, and now all that remains is silence, the silence of a home that once held laughter, the silence of a man who still had stories left to tell, and the haunting echo of Sally's voice reminding the world. It didn't have to end this way. Just when it felt like the story couldn't get darker, Sally hinted that this may not be the end, because according to what's circulating behind the scenes, tomorrow could change everything. Court filings are expected to drop in the morning, and along with those filings, there's a rumor investigators are taking seriously, that they may have uncovered audio recordings from inside the Reiner home, captured not by a person, but by a device, a smart home system, something like Alexa, or a similar voice-activated recorder. If those files exist, Sally suggested, they could become the most chilling evidence of all, because it would mean the final moments weren't just reconstructed by timelines and witness accounts. They were heard, recorded, stored, waiting, and if a jury ever hears what happened inside that house, it could destroy any defense narrative instantly. It could seal Nick's fate completely. The mental break a story would collapse under the weight of real-time sound. The truth wouldn't be something argued. It would be something experienced. And that's what makes this possibility so terrifying. Not only for the defense, but for everyone who ever loved Rob and Michelle, because it would force the world to hear what they endured. It would turn private horror into public record. Sally didn't say she wanted that kind of spectacle, but she made it clear she wants one thing above everything: the truth. She believes Hollywood is already preparing to manage optics, to contain scandal, to protect reputations, even now. But if recordings exist, none of that will matter, because sound doesn't care about spin. Sound doesn't soften itself to protect legacies. Sound tells you exactly how frightened someone was, exactly how desperate, exactly how final. And then Sally shifted the conversation in a way that made it feel suddenly personal. She asked viewers to do something simple, something almost uncomfortable. Look at the people in your own life, check in on the ones who have gone quiet. Reach out to the ones who keep saying I'm fine, but carry exhaustion behind their smile. Because sometimes the people who look the happiest in public are hiding the darkest pain behind closed doors. Then she delivered the closing tribute. Not a Hollywood goodbye, a human one. Rest in peace, Rob Reiner, a man who gave the world laughter, love, and unforgettable stories. You deserved a far better ending than this. And with that, she left the audience with one final reminder. The story is still unfolding, and what comes next may be even more disturbing than what we've already heard. And as the world watches what happens next, one truth feels impossible to ignore. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't outside your home, it's the one you keep protecting. If those recordings exist, the public won't just learn the facts, they'll feel the fear, and no amount of Hollywood silence will be able to erase it. So here's the question. Do you believe this was a sudden mental break, or do you believe it was something far more calculated? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading everyone. And if you want the moment those court filings land and what investigators may reveal next, make sure you're subscribed, because this story isn't over, not even close.